Hey there, fellow felines, and welcome to the Political Kitty community. I'm Mr. G, and after sitting on the sidelines, biting my nails, wishing and hoping my American neighbors would choose sanity over chaos, social progress over social regression, economic prosperity over financial ruin, well, sadly, that is not the case. I've sat back and watched our world get further plunged into darkness and despair. As a Canadian, I want to do everything I can to support those affected by these tyrannical and oppressive policies, but I cannot. To incite or suggest civil uprising is not only risky, but illegal. Canada has strict laws against participating in or supporting foreign insurrections. Canadians who join a U.S. revolt could face legal consequences, and, under the UN Charter, countries are not supposed to interfere in the internal affairs of other states. Assisting a revolt could be seen as a violation of sovereignty. This does not, however, stop me from participating in the dissemination of accurate information, social and political advocacy, and focusing on humanitarian aid and diplomatic efforts. I created this channel to incite dialogue between Canadians, Americans, and the rest of our global village, not conflict, violence, or further divisiveness. These days, it's easy to not know which way is up. Somewhere along the way, we got lost in the chaos of the daily barrage of breaking news this and breaking news that, to the point we've become buried under a mountain of Trumpian delusions, and some folks have lost their perspective. Whether you're ready or not, this cool cat is ready to pounce on the headlines, scratch beneath the surface, and uncover what's really going on in the world. I'll be covering the stories that impact us here at home and around this big ball of yarn we call home. So catch a sunbeam, grab your kitty crunchies, and get ready to unpack with me this dumpster fire of a catastrophe that is the daily news. While you're at it, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode, and be sure to share it with the Kitty Collective. We've got a lot to cover, so sharpen your claws, fluff your tails, and let's pounce on the news.
In Springfield, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets.
So you might be asking yourself, what does Canada have to do with American politics? Well, actually, a lot. Canada and the United States share a deeply interconnected socio-political and economic history rooted in colonialism, trade, and shared democratic values. Historically, both nations evolved from British colonial rule, embracing liberal democracy and capitalist economies, which fostered strong diplomatic ties and economic interdependence, particularly through agreements like NAFTA, now USMCA. Culturally, the influence has been reciprocal, with media, migration, and social movements flowing across the border. However, contemporary events reveal strains in this relationship, partly due to political polarization in the United States, challenges to democratic norms, and shifting foreign policy priorities. The rise of populism and misinformation, especially in the United States, has influenced Canadian political discourse and heightened concerns about democratic stability. Economic tensions, such as trade disputes and protectionist policies, have further complicated relations. These dynamics reflect a departure from historical stability, posing challenges to the traditionally harmonious North American alliance. As democracy faces pressures from within and outside both countries, the long-standing interconnectedness now navigates a more volatile global and domestic political landscape. Politics is deeply embedded in culture and society, influencing almost every aspect of our daily lives. It shapes the rules, norms, and systems that govern our communities. from the laws that dictate our rights and responsibilities to the public policies that impact education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. At its core, politics is about power: who has it, how it's used, and who benefits from it. This power dynamic influences cultural values and societal norms, affecting how we perceive identity, justice, and community. For example, political decisions shape narratives around race, gender, class, and national identity, influencing social interactions and cultural expressions. Moreover, politics drives social change by challenging or reinforcing the status quo. Movements advocating for civil rights, gender equality, or environmental justice are inherently political, reflecting cultural shifts and influencing future legislation. Conversely, political resistance to change can maintain traditional cultural norms, illustrating the tug of war between progress and preservation within societies. Ultimately, politics isn't just about governments or elections. It's about how societies organize themselves, prioritize values, and allocate resources. It impacts everything from the availability of public services to the freedoms we exercise in our personal lives, making it an integral and unavoidable root of everyday existence. Let's start with Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta. Now, I'm all for innovation, but Smith's plan to restructure healthcare is raising more red flags than a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Her government is currently under investigation for allegedly pressuring prosecutors to drop charges related to the COVID-19 protests. And now she's pushing to privatize parts of Alberta's healthcare system. Here's the thing: healthcare isn't just an Alberta issue, it's a Canadian issue. By fragmenting our healthcare system, Smith is undermining Canada's ability to present a unified front on critical issues. And that's a problem, because when we're divided, we're vulnerable.
These are amongst the most shocking allegations that I have ever seen.
The leader of the Alberta NDP demanding the Premier and two of her ministers step aside from their roles pending 4 investigations that the official opposition is now calling for. New allegations reported by the Globe and Mail come from the now fired CEO of Alberta Health Services. Athana Mentzelopoulos, through a letter by her lawyer, claims she was let go 2 days before meeting with the Auditor General over government deals with private health companies. The government also fired the board last Friday. The fired CEO claims that was after they encouraged her to take her concerns to the RCMP.
Smith has been involved in controversies concerning Alberta Health Services. Allegations emerged of political interference from Smith's office in the restructuring of Alberta Health Services, including the rapid hiring and firing of personnel. A letter signed by over 200 physicians called for an investigation into these matters, highlighting concerns about the politicization of healthcare administration.
With her government under fire, facing corruption allegations, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith stayed silent on the matter Friday. City News' emails and texts to her press secretary went unanswered past broadcast deadline.
Certainly there's smoke there. And in this case, it does seem like there's some fire. Why she would be fired 2 days before talking to the Auditor General?
She is Athana Mentzelopoulos. According to a report by the Globe and Mail, the former Alberta Health Services CEO claims the UCP government fired her because she was raising alarm about at least $600 million worth of contracts with private health companies. Dr. Braden Manns was an AHS executive until 2023. He says AHS has an oversight process for picking contractors, but it's the health minister's office that agrees to the prices.
I don't know who was actually aware of the prices within these contracts. I know we were all concerned that the prices were not competitive in comparison to what the cost of doing the surgery in the health system.
Mans is thankful Alberta's Auditor General Doug Wiley is now investigating potential conflicts of interest on contracts for chartered surgical facilities, medication, and COVID-19 protective equipment. The health minister's office said Thursday that Adriana LaGrange will cooperate with that investigation, but denied the CEO or board were fired over a review of contracts. AHS says they have stopped awarding any new deals to companies involved in the allegations as it conducts its own review. The NDP is also calling for a public inquiry, an ethics investigation, and an RCMP probe. Albertans deserve to hear the full story. The public deserves nothing less than the truth, health critic Sarah Hoffman urged in a Friday statement.
Dealing with allegations of corruption, we're talking about AHS making private deals with private companies that have inside access to the government.
Still, there are a lot of unanswered questions for a premier in no hurry to stand in front of Albertans and answer them. Smith last did a press conference on January 29th. From Edmonton, Sean Amato, City News.
Recent developments have brought to light significant allegations involving Alberta Premier and the AHS. Former CAO Athania Mentzelopoulos has filed a $1.7 million lawsuit against the government and Minister Adriana LaGrange, alleging wrongful dismissal and a cover-up of political interference in health services contracts. The lawsuit claims that Mentzelopoulos was terminated for investigating inflated contracts and conflicts of interest within the health system, and that she faced pressure from government officials to approve contracts with private surgical facilities at inflated prices.
Former Alberta Health Services CEO Athana Mentzelopoulos formally filed a wrongful dismissal lawsuit on Wednesday against both AHS and the Alberta government, seeking $1.7 million. The lawsuit obtained by City News claims she was fired because of her investigation into various contracts with private surgical companies that she believes were overpriced. The suit also claims she was fired by interim AHS president and CEO Andre Tremblay after the AHS board refused to terminate her employment. The board itself was later fired. Mentzelopoulos also claims that she was dismissed January 8th, 2 days before she was scheduled to meet with the Auditor General to discuss her discovery. The claims have not been proven in court, and the province has yet to file a statement of defense. In a post to social media Wednesday, Alberta's Health Minister Adriana LaGrange says she has seen former AHS CEO's statement of claim. Her social media post reads, "Upon initial review, many of the allegations and claims made are clearly false, while others will need to be investigated further as part of the Auditor General's work and the government's internal review of this matter. As I am named defendant in this claim, I will be filing a detailed statement of defense in short order. I very much look forward to doing so." Previously, LaGrange said an unnamed third party has been called in for an investigation into these reports.
Up until recently, Premier Smith has remained silent. Breaking her silence in response to these allegations, Premier Smith has publicly addressed the situation, expressing her commitment to transparency and welcoming an investigation into the matter. She emphasized the importance of accountability within Alberta's health services and assured the public that the government will thoroughly examine the claims.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said Saturday that she was not involved in any wrongdoing regarding the recent Alberta Health Services procurement. This comes after reports that the former AHS CEO was fired because she raised the alarm about at least $600 million worth of contracts with private health companies. On social media Saturday, Premier Smith described the allegations as troubling, and she plans to write to the Auditor General for an expedited review. Alberta's opposition is also calling for a public inquiry, an ethics investigation, and an RCMP probe.
Mayor Smith, when did you become aware of concerns over contracts at AHS, and do you think the RCMP should be called in?
Well, I'm glad that we're going to have the Auditor General take a look at it. I first became aware of it when I saw the newspaper reporting on it. And we're interested in hearing what the Auditor General has to say. We've already set up a shared file so that they can get all of the documents that we have to see if there is any wrongdoing. If there's wrongdoing, we'd like to get to the bottom of it. And if there isn't, we need to find out why AHS is standing in the way of charter surgical centers.
How do you not know what your chief of staff is up to if the allegations prove to be?
Well, we've been asking for 8 months for any, as I understand it from my health minister, for any indication of wrongdoing. We've not seen any. So I think we have to see if there's any wrongdoing first. And if there is, then we have to clean it up.
As you can see from her involvement with the Alberta health system, Smith's communication style and policy positions have drawn comparisons to current U.S. President Donald Trump. Her skepticism towards established scientific consensus, promotion of unproven treatments, and framing of unvaccinated individuals as a discriminated group echoes themes prevalent in Trump's rhetoric. These parallels have raised concerns about the influence of populist narratives in Canadian politics and their potential to polarize public discourse. But it doesn't stop there. After the break, we'll look into how her policies during COVID inspired protests and even led to the shutting down of a border. All right, cool cats and kittens. Time to take a quick pause, because even the most curious kitties need a break to stretch their paws and refuel. Before we dive back into the litter box of politics, here's a word from our fabulous feline sponsors, because let's face it, even political kitties need a little kibble to keep the purrs going. Stay tuned, we'll be right back with more scratching, more pouncing, and more unpacking of the news.
In Springfield, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets. In Springfield, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets.
Welcome back, kitty community. Now, we're diving deeper into Smith's COVID-19 response and the resulting Coutts blockade. Smith has been a vocal critic of pandemic restrictions and vaccine mandates. In January of this year, her government released a 269-page report recommending halting COVID-19 vaccinations for healthy children and teens and advocating for the use of alternative treatments like ivermectin and hydrochloroquine, drugs not approved by Health Canada for COVID-19 treatment. This report faced substantial criticism from medical professionals and organizations, including the Alberta Medical Association and the Canadian Medical Association, which labeled it as anti-science and potentially harmful. Critics argue that such positions undermine public health efforts and could erode trust in medical guidance.
We have 75% of the public who say not only hit me, but hit me harder and keep me away from those dirty unvaxxed.
This video of Danielle Smith resurfacing. In it, she makes a comparison between the 75% of Albertans who got the COVID-19 vaccine and the supporters of Nazi Germany and Hitler. She's apologizing, but some are not surprised by this November 2021 video. Calgary Jewish Federation tells City News in part, "We made clear comments about these comparisons back when they were made, adding, in today's campaign climate, it is important that our community is not used as a wedge between political parties, and with this, we will not be commenting further on this issue at this time." It's not the first time a UCP member has made this kind of comparison. A few weeks after Smith was sworn in as the Premier of Alberta, the UCP disqualified a candidate, Nadine Wellwood, who equated vaccine mandates to the Nazi regime. City News asked Smith about the video, and she responded in a statement saying, in part, "As everyone knows, I was against the use of vaccine mandates during COVID. However, the horrors of the Holocaust are without precedent, and no one should make any modern-day comparisons that minimize the experience of the Holocaust and suffering under Hitler, nor the sacrifice of our veterans. I've always been and remain a friend to the Jewish community, Israel and our veterans, and I apologize for any offensive language used regarding this issue made while on talk radio or podcasts during my previous career. In Calgary, Hannah Said, City News.
Smith has been a long vocal critic of COVID-19 vaccine mandates, lockdowns, and other restrictive measures. She has argued that such policies infringe on personal freedoms and have significant economic and social costs. During her campaign for leadership of the UCP in 2022, she pledged to protect individual rights and limit government overreach in pandemic responses, which she quickly backtracked with the implementation of controversial gender policies, sparking debates about individual rights and public health. We will save that for another catfight on another episode. During the 2022 blockade at the border crossing, which was a protest against COVID-19 mandates disrupting trade and transportation, Smith expressed support and sympathy for the protesters. Following the conviction of 2 individuals involved in the blockade for mischief and weapons possession, Smith emphasized the importance of respecting the jury's decision.
Traffic could soon start to trickle through the border between Coutts, Alberta and Montana, but there are plenty of other slowdowns and protests popping up throughout the province. The Canadian press reporting a breakthrough in the 5-day standoff between anti-vaccine mandate protesters and the RCMP that has brought traffic between the border to a standstill. Word is that 1 lane of highway in each direction is to open.
However, her earlier sympathetic stance towards the protesters has been criticized for potentially emboldening actions that disrupt public order and economic stability.
I have to talk to, I'm getting some legal advice on who we might be able to issue pardons for, but the things that come to top of mind for me are people who got arrested as pastors, people who got arrested for not, or got given fines for not wearing masks. These are not things that are normal to get fines and get prosecuted for. So I'm going to look into the range of outstanding fines that there still are, and to get some legal advice on which ones we're able to cancel and provide amnesty.
Hey there, Kitty Collective. It's time to take a quick break, because even political kitties need to stretch their paws, grab a snack. Here's a word from our perfect sponsors, who keep this channel running smoother than a well-groomed fur coat. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more news to pounce on.
In Springfield, they're eating the cats. They're eating the pets. In Springfield, they're eating the cats. They're eating the pets.
Smith proposed the Alberta Sovereignty Act, which would allow the province to resist federal policies, including COVID-19 mandates, which she believes are not in Alberta's best interest. This act has been controversial, with critics arguing it could undermine national unity and the rule of law. The Alberta Sovereignty Act is Smith's big idea to let Alberta say no thanks to federal policies it doesn't like. Think of it as Alberta trying to be the rebellious kitten of the Canadian family, but instead of knocking over a glass of milk, it's knocking over the rule of law. Smith says it's about protecting Alberta's interests, especially when it comes to things like energy, healthcare, and COVID-19 mandates. But critics are calling it a constitutional nightmare, arguing it could undermine national unity and create a patchwork of policies across the country. And let's be real, this isn't just about Alberta. It's part of a bigger trend of provinces pushing back against federal authority. And it's got a lot of folks worried about the future of Canadian unity. So, is this act a bold move for provincial rights or a dangerous step towards fragmentation? Either way, it's got everyone talking and scratching their heads.
Canada's provinces and territories are part of a larger whole, but are not subordinate to it. As Albertans, we love our Canada deeply. This is our home, and we are honored to be contributing members. But the way Ottawa has treated the province, most especially Alberta, is unacceptable. Albertans are demanding action to restore a relationship that respects Alberta's sovereign areas of provincial jurisdiction as defined by the Constitution.
But this isn't just a provincial power play. It's part of a much bigger and frankly frightening trend. Think about it. This act lets Alberta say no thanks to federal policies it doesn't like. Sounds harmless, right? But here's the thing. When you start fragmenting a country's laws and policies, you're playing with fire. It's like letting one cat decide the rules for the whole litter box. Chaos ensues. Now, let's zoom out for a second. This isn't just happening in Alberta. We've seen this before, down south with Trump's America First policies, where the rule of law took a back seat to personal and political agendas. Trump's attempts to consolidate power, undermine institutions, and ignore international norms sets a dangerous precedent. And now we're seeing echoes of that here in Canada. But wait, it gets scarier. Look at what's happening globally. Take a look at what's happening in Gaza, for example. When powerful leaders or nations decide they can ignore international laws and norms, it sets off a chain reaction. It's like a game of geopolitical Jenga. Pull out one block, the whole tower starts to wobble. So how does Smith's Sovereignty Act fit into all of this? It's not just about Alberta versus Ottawa. It's about normalizing the idea that rules don't apply if you don't like them. And once that door is open, it's a slippery slope. What's to stop other provinces or even other countries from doing the same? Suddenly, you've got a world where everyone's making up their own rules, and trust me, that's not a world any one of us want to live in. So while Smith might frame this as standing up for Alberta, it's really part of a much bigger, much scarier pattern. And if we're not careful, it could set a dangerous precedent, not just for Canada, but for the world. Because what's happening in Alberta isn't happening in a vacuum. It's part of a much bigger, messier picture. Take Trump, for example. Since his first term in 2016, he's been acting like the rules don't apply to him.
But with regards to the rules, with regards to how delegates are selected in places like Colorado and places like Wyoming and places like Louisiana, where he seems to be essentially getting out-hustled, what say you to that? That all of a sudden he's complaining that the rules aren't fair when these are the same rules that have been on the books for decades? But if the rules, again, Colorado specifically, I mean, the rules were tweaked a bit last fall, but he declared late summer. So theoretically, he should have known the rules for how delegates were selected in Colorado.
It's not about the rules. Seriously, it's not about the rules, and everyone knows it.
He's been clawing to buy Greenland since 2019.
The land of ice is fast becoming the land of opportunity. Global warming is melting Greenland, exposing the rocks beneath and attracting speculators. But President Trump's interest in buying the country had been dismissed as a joke. Not anymore.
Essentially, it's a large real estate deal. A lot of things could be done. It's hurting Denmark very badly because they're losing almost $700 million a year carrying it. So they carry it at a great loss. And strategically for the United States, it would be nice.
From undermining institutions to ignoring international norms, he's setting a dangerous precedent. That power and ideology can trump, unintended, the rule of law. And now we're seeing echoes of that here in Canada with Danielle Smith's Alberta Sovereignty Act. This act isn't just about Alberta saying no thanks to federal policies. It's about normalizing the idea that rules are optional if you don't like them. Sound familiar? It should, because it's part of the same playbook Trump's been using for years. The scary part? When leaders start ignoring the rules, it doesn't just affect their backyard. It sends ripples across the globe. The world is looking at the United States right now and asking, will the real president of the United States please stand up?
That is the nonsense that Donald Trump throws out there to try to distract the news media from what he really is doing, which includes literally taking food away from starving babies, from starving children, starving grandparents. And the person who is helping him do that stood over Donald Trump in the White House today, thereby delivering a picture of presidential subservience, the likes of which we have never seen, the most powerless image of a president of the United States ever created by a camera. There it is. In that shot, Elon Musk is doing everything he possibly can to tell the world, without saying a word, that Donald Trump is not the boss of me.
There is no doubt our politics are interconnected. Policies and philosophies bleed across borders faster than a cat knocking over a glass of milk. What happens in Alberta doesn't stay in Alberta. It influences other provinces, other countries, and even global norms. So what's the big takeaway? Whether it's Trump's authoritarian tendencies, the invasion of Gaza, or Alberta's Sovereignty Act, we're seeing a dangerous trend. The erosion of rules, norms, and trust in institutions. And if we're not careful, this could set a precedent that destabilizes not just Canada, but the world. But here's the good news. We're not powerless. By staying informed, speaking out, and holding our leaders accountable, we can push back against this trend. Because at the end of the day, democracy isn't a spectator sport. It's a team effort. And that's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you very much for joining me on Political Kitties. I've been your host, Mr. G. I know we could barely scratch the surface. There's a lot of yarn to unravel, especially about how Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the federal Conservatives, is taking pages straight out of Donald Trump's playbook. We're going to have to save that for another time. Instead, we're going to take a look at Scott Moe, Premier of Saskatchewan, in relation to Donald Trump's newest war against trans people. Breaking news, just last night, a judge put a pause on Trump's executive order to restrict transgender care signed January 28 of this year. I am kidding you not. This is a serious violation of human rights, and I promise you, my fellow kitty community, I am all over this like catnip. I take my trans family very serious, and as a Canadian, an attack on one is an attack on all, and together, as allies, it's our duty to stand together and fight for justice, and to maintain our basic human rights we have fought so passionately for since Stonewall. Remember, Stonewall started because a group of trans women had enough. Well, kitty community, this little Canadian trans kitty has had enough. My claws are out. Back up. No one hurts my pride. This is one cat fight you won't want to miss. With still more to unravel, that's all the more reason to tune in next time. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to paw the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends, and become part of the Kitty Collective. Speaking of stories, I'd like to hear from you, our viewer. Are you left with any burning questions or thoughts from today's video? Maybe you have something you'd like to share with the Kitty Collective. Comment on this video and keep the conversation going using the hashtag Political Kitties. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and always keep your perspective. Meow for now.